Hi girls. Today's class is still on Parshas Vayikra because we're still in this Parsha this week. And I'm going to focus on something else that comes up in this week's Parsha, which is the well-known teaching that the first word in this week's Parsha and in this Sefer of Vayikra, the word Vayikra has a small aleph in it. And our sages teach us, and they bring out that this shows or illustrates the humility of Moshe Rabbeinu. So the theme that I'd like to focus on for this short class is humility. A very elusive and I think difficult to achieve character trait, but one which nevertheless we must explore. So I'd just like to start off with something that I heard and it moved me deeply, and that was a statement once made by Golda Meir, where she looked at somebody and said, "Don't be so humble, you're not that great." And clearly she was alluding to false humility, which is something that we also have to be very careful to steer clear of. But that's not going to be the focus today. I'm going to look at some of the teachings of the Rebbe Rashab, Reb Shalom Dovber, the fifth Rebbe of Lubavitch, and what he says about humility. And he teaches that humility and joy go hand in hand. So that's what I'm bringing, and now we're going to look at how we support that statement based on the Rebbe Rashab's teaching and some other sources from the Torah. So, interestingly, there is no real opportunity for joy, for true deep joy, without humility. And he says how that humility and a sense of nothingness are the receiving channel and the cause for happiness. Now, that sounds all very nice. What does he say about how one becomes humble? How do we pursue humility and trying to achieve this very, very beautiful character trait? Firstly, he points out how it's not noticing one's self much. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that a person doesn't think much of themselves. Okay? That's low self-esteem, which actually is usually the work of the Yetzer Hara, and it makes us obsess on ourselves. And I'm not here preaching to you about that. It's something that I've grappled with for much of my life. I think some people have that struggle within themselves, and the question is how that's then channeled. So it's not about thinking less of yourself. It's thinking about yourself less. You see the difference? Okay? It's that you don't spend much time thinking about yourself. Your focus is elsewhere. Okay? And that is something that leads to humility, or that is a characteristic of humility. And actually, it's a very liberating way to live. So the Rebbe Rashab points out that even if somebody has achieved much in their lifetime, or they are very great in Torah and piety, those are not things that should make the person feel like they are a somebody, okay, and that they are great. And that we learn out from Moshe Rabbeinu clearly, and is pointed out in this week's Parsha Vayikra, that though he had so many gifts from above, from Shamayim, what did he do? He understood that these were bestowed from above. They weren't something he had achieved all on his own. And in fact, he constantly grappled with the idea that had somebody else been given these gifts from above, they probably would have achieved more than he had in his lifetime. And that kept him very humble. So the next point that the Rebbe Rashab brings out is that a humble person has no expectations. A humble person does not walk around feeling entitled, whether it's entitled to honor or entitled to be treated with respect or entitled, even by Hashem, to be given certain blessings. For instance, a person thinks, I do so much good in the world, I try to be a servant of God, and therefore I'm entitled to, have things run the way that I feel rather than the way that they might be panning out in my life. On the contrary, a humble person sees everything they get as a gift, and therefore everything is a cause for celebration. So they feel a natural joy. Everything they get is something that they weren't entitled to, and they don't necessarily even feel worthy, but they're incredibly grateful, and gratitude certainly goes hand in hand with humility. And in fact, a humble person is never depressed, says the Rebbe Rashab, because he even rejoices in his lacking, right? In that which comes to him and is perhaps a challenge, a difficulty, or a lack. He understands this comes from above, right? This is the hand of God, and therefore is the best thing for him or her in that moment, at that time. So a humble person keeps their spirits up while keeping their ego down. Now, this idea of a person embracing whatever they get, whether it's sweet or it's bitter, because it comes from Hashem, it comes from above, and therefore it's coming from only the deepest love. This is beautifully illustrated in the Talmud. The Talmud cites several incidents which could cause a person discomfort, okay, which could be considered a difficulty. The first is asking a tailor to sew a suit, and when the person receives the suit, it doesn't fit properly. The second is if a person orders a hot drink and what they are served is a drink that is cold or tepid. It's not hot the way they had anticipated. And the third is when a person reaches into their pocket expecting to pull out 3 coins and they only pull out 2. Now look how interesting that is. Those are small, minor discomforts. And yet we are told that the Midrash encourages a person to respond positively to those challenges, okay? Because if they come from above, then they actually allow one to be freed from greater challenges as long as they are embraced with humility. And that takes humility to say, clearly, this is what I need right now, and therefore it's beautiful for me, it's good for me. The same way as when a person experiences embarrassment or inner pain. What is that? What does it feel like? It feels like fire. It burns inside, but fire purifies. And so if they could look at it from the perspective of God is purifying me, He's cleaning me up so that I can be more beautiful, so that I can shine more brightly, then that is a response of humility and doesn't lead to bitterness and feelings that I was entitled rather to something else. So it says in Igeres HaRamban, which is a book that is written by the Ramban to his son, counseling him to always pursue humility in his life, because that is the channel for abundant blessings. It says, always be willing to forgive the mishaps which occur in your home. When someone breaks a bottle of expensive wine, if you react with compassion, God Himself will repay your loss. So, let's just end off with a story that illustrates the beauty of humility and of embracing that which comes to us, the way that the Rebbe Rashab counsels us to do, rather than feeling like we are owed things in this world, rather than feeling that things should be different from the way they are. So this is a story about Rav, one of the great Amoraim, who is quoted in the Gemara all the time. He was a colleague of Shmuel, and his real name was Abba ben Ivo. He was known to be handsome and strong, and he was a student of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, known as Rebbe. So Rav was so humble, and he always pursued peace to the degree that if someone offended him, if someone caused him to feel embarrassed or upset, he would be the first one to go and ask forgiveness from that person in order that there be peace between them. There's a story told that once Rav sent a messenger to a rich man calling him to court. And the rich man was very proud of his riches. So he didn't come to court. Rather, he sent a messenger to Rav saying, "Do you know how rich I am? All the camels of the Arabs would not be able to carry even the keys to my treasure houses." When Rav heard that message, what did he do? He remarked that the rich man would soon be relieved of all his riches. Very soon after that, the king issued an order that all the rich man's possessions should be confiscated. Hearing this, the rich man came running to Rav, begging his forgiveness. And what did Rav do? He forgave him on the spot, and he prayed for him. And a short while later, the rich man's possessions were returned to him. Just an idea to go with that is that this, connecting it now with the coronavirus, just a thought that I had is that it is medically referred to as COVID-19. So COVID, we could look at the word, it seems connected to the word kavod, which is honor, and something that we want to run away from this COVID-19. Perhaps one of the antidotes is running away from honor, as Rav did, and as this week's Torah portion instructs us to do.